I want to introduce myself first. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. I'm Carly Sapola. I'm the Director of Engagement for the American Solar Energy Society. I'd like to thank you for joining us on our monthly webinar series. Before we get started, I just want to update everyone on who and what ASES is, highlight some of our current events and programs, and then we'll go ahead and hand it off to our moderator today. So first off, the American Solar Energy Society is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were established in 1954 and advocate for sustainable living in 100% renewable energy by sharing information, events, and resources to cultivate community and power progress. You can join our community at any time at ases.org/join. Webinar registrants get a special 10% discount on all ASES memberships except for life by using promo code webinar. Wanted to remind everyone that we'll be having our 51st annual National Solar Conference, Solar 2022 Energy Transition with Economic Justice in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the University of New Mexico from June 21st to 24th, 2022, this summer. The conference content will be presented via technical sessions, forums, posters, and more. The opening reception is on June 21st and will feature the father of modern linguistics and the most cited scholar in modern history, Noam Chomsky. The conference will also feature 3 keynote sessions throughout the week. Wednesday, June 22nd, will feature Michelle Lujan Grisham, the New Mexico governor, Martin Heinrich, the United States Senator for New Mexico. June 23rd will feature Shalonda Baker, the Secretarial Advisor on Equity and Deputy Director for Energy Justice at the Department of Energy. Friday, June 24th, will feature Ed Mazria, the founder of Architecture 2030, Sandra Begay, principal member and technical staff at Sandia National Laboratories and a UNM regent, as well as Gigi Goldman and Hal Aronson, co-founders of We Share Solar. All of the conference sessions will be live streamed for you to watch in real time and available later in a recorded format for all conference registrants. There's going to be a ton of networking opportunities available in this year's hybrid format. Early bird discounts are available until March 31st. For all of you emerging professionals, young professionals online today, we're also offering a special JEDI scholarship for young professionals to receive complimentary registration to Solar 2022. You must apply by April 15th. We'll also have additional volunteer opportunities available soon. You can learn more about the schedule, pricing, accommodations, and more at ases.org/conference. You can also contact me at conference@ases.org if you have any questions. And mark your calendars. The 2022 National Solar Tour will be on October 1st and 2nd, 2022. The sign-up forms are live now. You can get involved and learn more at nationalsolartour.org. I also want to invite everyone to participate in our online community. This is a space for our community to collaborate, share content, information, and network. We recently launched a new online forum called Ask Renewable Energy Experts, where we have our technical division experts online to help answer your questions about anything solar or sustainability related. You can hop online now and start engaging at community@ases.org. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to my ASES updates for you all. I want to note that this webinar will be available in a recorded format soon. I'll follow up with everyone via email as soon as it's available. I'll ask that you submit your comments to the chat section and questions to the Q&A section. We'll be reviewing and answering any questions and comments you guys have at the end of the presentation. Now I'll go ahead and introduce you to today's webinar moderator, Narelle Kipple, the Membership and Programs Manager for ASES, who will tell you more about today's format and our speakers. Narelle.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. So today we will be going over how a bunch of different people have gotten to where they are at different organizations and companies in the renewable energy field. And so we will be focusing on their story and then also the opportunities at these different organizations for how to get involved through internships or volunteer experiences. So up first today, we have Sydney Munoz from Revolve Energy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So my name is Sydney Munoz. I work at Revolve. I just wanted to take a few minutes. I know all the panelists have an opportunity to kind of share their story a little bit and talk about Revolve. So I'll first start about my story and then talk about Revolve. And if you have any questions, I'm always excited to chat and talk about more. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or elsewhere. But yeah, I'll start kind of with my university experience and kind of what led me into the renewable and sustainability field. I went to undergrad at Southern Oregon University. That's where I got my bachelor's in business with a concentration in marketing. I have a certificate in sustainability leadership. I really started becoming really more interested and thought about sustainability as a career path during my first term in university. I took a course, it was a writing course centered on sustainability, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of different issues and different kind of career opportunities and my passion for sustainability. I took that course my first year, and my second semester in my freshman year, I joined a Sustainability Resource Center. So I was there for my whole university experience. I started for the first 6 months as a co-student coordinator, and then after the first 6 months, I became the student director of the Resource Center, which is a position I held until I graduated. So I graduated in 3 years. So it was a bit quicker than, it was through an accelerated baccalaureate program. During undergrad, I was involved not only in the Resource Center, but also on the Sustainability Council, which was an advisory board on sustainability to the university president. And then also I was on sustainability director for student government. So I was really interested in sustainability in that sense. We worked on a lot of different issues. So we worked on everything from renewable energy to infrastructure change to personal sustainability, transportation, different things like that. So I graduated in 3 years, and I was very interested in pursuing a career in sustainability, but I also had always wanted to be a teacher since I was a child. So I felt like I didn't have the opportunity to kind of study abroad since I did my career in university so quickly. So I decided to teach English in Costa Rica for a year. So I went there in 2018 to really kind of figure out what I wanted to do, if I wanted to pursue teaching or assist career in the sustainability field. Halfway through, I realized that I really wanted to be in the sustainability field, and I felt the same way ever since. So it really gave me a lot of clarity and decided kind of like my purpose for what I wanted my career to be. I came back to the States, and I studied for a master's degree in sustainability leadership. And through that, I worked at the Colorado Department of Transportation in transportation, alternative transportation, and sustainable transportation modes. And then after that, that was kind of right around the time of the pandemic when it started hitting, when I graduated and my internship was up. So kind of a stressful time. And so I got a career in, I worked in the nonprofit sector in transportation, and then I found the current position that I'm at, and it kind of melded a lot of different skills that I wanted to pursue. One, it was a big focus on sustainability. I'd done renewable energy work in the past, so I was really interested in that kind of sector. And then I also really liked how my position is really focused on communication and working with students. So that's when I started working at Revolve. I've been here for a little less than a year and a half, so joined December of 2021. So yeah, that's kind of my career path. I feel like it has shifted a little bit. And so yeah, that's kind of what got me into the renewable energy sector. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more too about Revolve. Revolve is a nonprofit organization. So we're based out of San Francisco, but we work throughout the country in the United States. So we help nonprofits go solar through our solar seed fund model, which basically, as one nonprofit goes solar through us, they pay us back through a solar lease or a power purchase agreement. And then that money goes to fund the next solar project. So it's kind of a revolving fund for solar. We've been around for 10 years and we've had 50 projects. And through that, my work at Revolve is really focused on half communications work and half leading our Solar Ambassador program, which I'll talk to you all about a little later. I saw a couple of the Solar Ambassadors here. So happy you're here on the webinar. But basically our Solar Ambassadors are a majority of college students who learn about solar, renewable energy, technology, communications, and community engagement work. And then they also help bring solar to a nonprofit in their community. So that's a little bit about me. I really enjoy working in the nonprofit space, especially earlier on in my career where I'm right now. You wear a lot of hats in a nonprofit space. I work with 5 other individuals, so we're a pretty small company. So it really gave me a lot of opportunity to kind of explore and do a lot of different things within our nonprofit that I might not have been able to experience in a larger company. So I'm really excited to kind of be here, answer any questions y'all have about nonprofit work or just kind of my journey. But yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sydney. Next up, we are going to Abraham Ellis, who works for Sandia National Lab.
Excellent. Can you hear me, Narelle?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And it is such a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to share my story and tell you a little bit about opportunities in this field, the way I see them. So as a matter of introduction, and this has quite a bit of relevance to how I ended up in renewable energy and sustainability, let me tell you, I was born and raised in Panama in a very small town, didn't have electricity or other basic services like running water and things like that. It was up in the mountains, fantastic childhood, but it got ingrained in my mind how big a difference a little bit of electricity made when we had a little hydroelectric power plant installed in the community. And having a refrigerator to me was just mind blowing that you could preserve food and have a little bit of light at night to study and those kinds of things. It was, just stayed with me as a child. And then throughout my adulthood. I, however, started out in medical school in Panama. I did 2 years there and had an opportunity to come to the US where medical school was not an option for me given the program that I was in. So I decided to study engineering, and that's where I got sort of reunited again with my calling, what I now consider my life calling to work on sustainability and renewable energy in particular. So I studied at New Mexico State University, got my bachelor's degree there pretty quickly since I already had a couple of years of medical school. It was about a year and a half later, I had my degree. And it was in my master's program when I really started focusing on renewable energy. I did my master thesis on renewable energy, well, specifically PV reliability. I wrote a lot of code in MATLAB and things like that, but I really got hooked on the idea of taking this as a career path. I was very fortunate that my first employment was at an institute associated with the university called the Southwest Technology Development Institute. And one of the projects that I was assigned in was to apply my newly acquired skills, what is solar and what is wind and all of that, and translating that, essentially making it useful for people in the developing world. So I travel quite a bit. I cannot tell you how many places in Latin America I travel, the Caribbean, lots of places in Mexico to teach about what renewable energy was and what they could do for their communities, and to back that up with demonstration projects for things like water pumping, for agriculture or refrigeration or drinking water or schools. In fact, if Robert Foster is on the line today, he and I partnered for many years to do that. In fact, he was the one that hired me at that institute. So I had a great time, and it just blew my mind, excuse me, what renewable energy could do to actually change people's lives. And I have been in this business ever since. So I went from doing that job to joining a utility here in New Mexico, PNM. And as part of that, I found a way to keep working on renewables. So I became kind of the lead engineer to study the interconnection of large-scale wind and solar power plants on the grid and made a name for myself, I suppose you can say, in working on some of these major problems, working on standards, working at working groups. It was, if you're interested in doing research or working in the renewable space, there is room for everything there. Utility folks are working there. You got people working on with degrees in humanities, but related to renewable energy, or working on the economics or materials. I mean, there's something there for everybody. So I had a great time for about 10 years working at PNM, and now I am at Sandia National Labs. In many ways, my dream job. I am now a senior manager for renewable energy technologies. And in part of that, as I'm responsible for all of our programs at this very large national laboratory that have to do with wind power, concentrating solar power, photovoltaic technologies, water power, and water energy. And so it's a very large program. Geothermal energy, by the way, is another part of my program. So it's all these different aspects of renewables and how they can be integrated to help. Going back to the roots I mentioned at the very beginning, and I'll end with this. I was always in the back of my mind, how can we make this real, not just for business and for creating wealth and all of that and changing the world, but also make it real for people that are in need. So I've spent quite a bit of my time working with rural and remote communities in Alaska, and many places across the US, with a fantastic team of people at Sandia. So even though we do a lot of research, a lot of it cutting edge, we also concentrate in what it will take, right, to bring this good news to actually help, people in the community. And that's been, to this day, the most rewarding part of my job, right, is when we intersect with people and as I said, try to make this real. So I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay with you for the duration of this wonderful event. But the first link there is about careers at Sandia. We hire a lot of people here. If you are a student, for example, we hire something like 1,000 interns every year, many of those in my renewable energy program. And there's also early career opportunities there. And the second link that I put on the chat is, if you're interested in learning more about our energy programs here at Sandia and the breadth of what we do here, please feel free to peruse. Let me know if there's anything I can do to, chat with you, point you in the right direction, introduce you to people. But we do need a lot of help. I mean, I can tell you from my perspective in the National Laboratory, we need more people to help us with this grand challenge in renewable energy going forward. So back to you, Narelle.
Thank you, Abe. And if anybody does want to connect with Abe, feel free to send an email to membership@ases.org and with your email, and we can get you in touch with Abe. He is going to have to pop off. So if you do have any questions for him, feel free to, also, he just actually put his email in the chat. So feel free to send him any emails. That is aellis@sandia.gov. Thank you so much for joining, Abe.
I'll stick around for another 5 minutes.
Perfect. And then next up, we are going to stay on the National Lab train and go to Paul.
John.
Awful with last names, I apologize, but he is with the National Renewable Energy Lab. And so, Paul, please tell us your story and then what opportunities Narelle has.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity, that I have to tell people about a little bit about my story. I like Abraham's story because I start a little bit like him. I was, originally I'm from Senegal. I was born and grew up in Senegal. I studied in a small village until age 7 before joining my parents in St. Louis of Senegal. And of course, when I was in the village, it was without electricity, no TV, but I always tell people that was, the most beautiful time of my life, because maybe I was not aware of what already existed, but I had the nature was there. And I believe that's also has something to do of what drive me to renewable energy. So I left Senegal to go to France. That's where I start my undergrad studies. You know, there were, of course, a lot of challenges, you know, but in any case, I was studying and working at the same time. But I have been able to overcome that, and I requested for an immigrant visa to Canada. So that's where I wanted to, actually, I wanted to come to US first, but I was not speaking English really at that time. So I went to Quebec, because to me it was a transition between French and English, because of course Senegal, we have a lot of language, national languages. The main one is Wolof, that's our national language, and there are some, we have also dialect, you know, but we were colonized by France, and so our, I would say, official language is French. So Quebec was for me a transition, but also, you know, of course, I like it a lot, Quebec and Canada in general. So that's where I did my master in energy and I would say more optics, you know, and applied to telecommunications. So after finishing my master, because I was not sure if I want to do a PhD, so after finishing my master, and this is, you know, I'm telling it more for maybe undergrad or you know, undergrad who are planning to do their graduate studies or to do a PhD. So I was not that sure, so I did a training, you know, with an internship with the professor I wanted to study with, just to see if I would like the topic or not. So then I did a 4 months internship before I start my graduate studies. Again, in, you know, I continue optics and telecommunication. And the strategy I was using, and because we talk also about internship, was before I go to conference, I try to first look who is coming to, you know, those conferences. I try to choose topics really I'm interested in. And I try to meet, you know, the professor who were in those fields, because, you know, and I started that about 2 years before I finished my PhD, just to be able to have some contact. And when the time comes, I may have those opportunities. And it works out well. You know, I have been having great contacts. However, I also applied, you know, at Narelle. I believe it was a year before I finished my PhD. Then it took about, I would say, maybe 7 months before, you know, I got contacted. But I was always persistent and just calling and asking, you know, about, you know, my application. So finally, I got called, not because I was calling, but you know, there was just the opportunity that had been there. So, and I came for the interview. That was November 2009. So I officially started at Narelle 22nd of February 2010. So today is my 12 years at Narelle. So, and I'm a scientist. You know, the reason I choose renewable energy, as I said, I was focused more on optics and telecommunication. But one of the reasons was because, of course, I'm from Africa originally, and my thought was always, what can I do there in order, you know, really to have an impact. And renewable energy was obvious to me because we had the natural resources for it, and I saw the future of it. And again, I'm gonna come back through my application to Narelle, because since I was not really, you know, I didn't have any experience in renewable energy at that time. So when I have been exchanging with some of my colleagues, they were telling me that, you know, I was a dreamer because number one, I was applying to a national lab, and number two, I don't have any experience in renewable energy. So when I look at the position, you know, that have been advertised, so I can say that I was probably qualified for about 20%, you know, of what they were asking. But in any case, I use really that opportunity to, I would say, do a marketing of what I could bring, what optics could bring to renewable energy, what my experience could bring to renewable energy, really, and focus, I would say, probably I spend 20% of my time talking about really, what they are asking for, how I match those skills. But it's really to be a little bit strategic also when you apply for, an internship or position. Don't be afraid to, to apply. Don't just look at the fact that you may not have a lot of experience, but what can you bring? Try to, convince people, try to show people that you are motivated, to work with them. And people also, of course, especially for undergrad, they know that you don't have that much experience, but they will be always willing to, give you opportunity because, of course, they, just like what Abraham said, especially in the national lab, we need people. We need also, of course, to train people, young people especially, motivate them and make sure that, they can take the lead. So Narelle is a national lab, just like Sandia. It's also part of the Department of Energy National Labs. There are about 17. And Narelle is the only national lab that is solely dedicated to renewable energy, I would say research, development, and deployment of renewable energy. So at this point, there are about, I would say, 3,000 employees. And so we work on all type of renewable energy, from photovoltaic, concentrating solar power, water splitting, geothermal, and there is a lot of aspect of energy integration also. Narelle is doing a lot of work there, and there is, the Flatiron campus. They're going to be a huge center for energy integration, different technology, wind, PV, and some other technology that are going to be integrated. And really, people are going to be doing a lot of work to see how eventually putting all those renewable energy together will eventually impact the grid. So in terms of internship, there are several opportunities. There are mainly two programs. Research participant program, where Narelle hire through, they hire undergrad and graduate students. Graduate students who are in university, of course, they interact with a professor if they want to work with Narelle. But we have, Narelle is working with all universities in Colorado almost. So there are always opportunities to work with Narelle if you are graduate students here in Colorado. So, and there are, through that research participant program also, there are undergrads, who can work about 25 to 30 hours per week. And there is a SULI program that's, an internship actually that is led by the department, the US Department of Energy. And through the SULI program, actually there are 3 applications per year. So there is a summer, believe, actually there is a spring, there is a summer, and there is a fall. One can find, of course, all those information to, the US Department of Energy. I can, of course, share some of those links later on with you, and provide also some link, for, internship at Narelle. But I would say one of the key things is really don't be afraid, first of all, to go to Narelle website, www.nrl.gov, and to the career part, you can look what the opportunities are there. But I will suggest also, most importantly, if there is a particular area you are interested in, check that area, see who is working on that particular area, and get in touch with the person who maybe is leading that area. I believe that's always one of the to my opinion, one of the most efficient way to get an opportunity. And people, scientists at Narelle, and I'm sure other national labs also are very open. So please contact them. They're gonna get back to you. if you are interested in a particular position or you want to ask questions, go for it. You can go through the official, I would say, way of applying for internship through the SULI program or through the research participant program. But I would say if you have opportunity to interact with people, please do it. So, that was what I wanted to tell you about my path in Narelle, and I will be happy to respond to any other question.
Thank you so much, Paul. And that's great insight that you brought for getting different positions. So next we are going to, and again, at the end, we will be answering questions. So if you do have any questions that you would like to ask any of these 3 attendees or anything in particular, feel free to throw it into the question and answer space down at the bottom there. And so next up, we have Samantha Lichten at Rocky Mountain Institute.
Hello, I feel like the outlier. I was like, oh my gosh, I need a presentation for this. You can tell like I'm used to the crutch at conference talks. So apologies, while there might be some words or more words on some of these slides. I'm very excited to be here today, both to talk about my background and how I got to where I am currently as an associate working on the carbon-free buildings program at RMI, as well as the work that I've done to get here and some of our intern and career opportunities at RMI. And so I just want to start with some brief introductions. And so a little bit about me and my background. And so continuing the trend of folks with non-English or Anglophone originally last names, my family immigrated to America about 100 years ago now. My great-grandparents all came to the United States from very poor Eastern European Jewish communities. And I feel very lucky in the way that my grandparents in a lot of ways represent what it meant to have the American dream. Both of my grandfathers ended up getting their PhDs and were academics. One grandfather, a chemistry professor at BU in Boston, the other a researcher at NIH. Both of my grandmothers were able to get master's degrees, which is something which is extraordinarily rare for people who grew up poor in the US in the 20s. And is still pretty rare today when you think about the opportunities that folks have, especially the way to get into careers that require a lot of education or things as technical as renewable energy. My family ended up moving to the Denver suburbs in 1997. My dad was a Lockheed Martin engineer. And so I grew up in and around both a lot of scientists, a lot of technical expertise, but also a lot of natural beauty. And watching kind of firsthand growing up as a kid in Colorado, what it meant as the concept of climate change became more and more part of the conversation. So it was the summer between first and second grade when the Hayman fire, at that point in time, the largest fire in Colorado's history, burned through my county, Douglas County. It was a couple of years later when I was finishing up in elementary school when An Inconvenient Truth came out, which I think in a lot of ways brought climate change to the public's attention for the first time. I had an absolutely phenomenal earth science teacher in 8th grade in a way that I realized like a lot of kids growing up don't necessarily get exposure to geology and the earth sciences as something you should really love and dive into as opposed to chemistry or physics or biology. And so when I was applying for college, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was like, I really am interested in how do you create solutions? I really want to work on climate change and these issues, but also I love working with people and how do you actually identify and make solutions to the problems we see in the world? And so when I was applying for college, I said I wanted a double major in environmental engineering and international relations. And when I got to be an undergrad at Yale, this really huge fancy institutions where there was a Rockefeller and a Kennedy in my class, kids who'd already had like nonprofits to cure cancer, it made me think about what actually that was the core of what I was interested in. Engineering seemed really technical. Did I want to spend that many course credits specifically focused on getting an ABET certification? what does it mean to be playing with like the kids' diplomats in this international relations space? Is that a way in the community in which I want to explore my college years? And I ended up deciding on my major the third week of my junior year, and I ended up majoring in geology and geophysics. My work in college was in this specific field called organic geochemistry or paleoclimatology, which is the research of climate change over million-year timescales. We have climate models that are looking forward. You know, how do we know what we think climate's going to be like in the future? But how do you actually ground truth that to what we think the climate system did in the past? And so in college, I spent my summers in research labs. I published, I presented internationally my senior thesis. And then I graduated in 2016 and didn't really know what I wanted to do next. So I thought, why don't I go home to Colorado? I could work on a campaign. This politics stuff seems really crazy. And then after I work on a campaign, I could go to grad school. It didn't quite turn out that way. The picture here in this slide is the Colorado State Capitol, which is where I actually ended up spending the majority of the first 5 years of my career. And so after serving as staff on my home congressional race in Colorado's 6th district, I went on and served as a legislative aide to the Senate minority, the Democratic caucus in the Colorado State Legislature. Got paid $12.50 an hour to be the main person bringing in speakers, including folks from Narelle or other organizations to speak at the state legislature on topics related to climate. I served as a fellow in Governor Hickenlooper's office from when Colorado joined the U.S. Climate Alliance to the announce of Rev West. Did a fellowship with a nonprofit called Ignite about getting more young women involved in civic leadership. And most recently, before joining RMI, I served as a legislative liaison for the Colorado Energy Office, which means my job was to be the administration's lobbyist on clean energy and climate issues at the state capitol, figuring out how do we actually advance the solutions that we need to reach our climate goals. And so I don't always recommend working for elected officials. It can be really challenging. And for me personally, I was looking for something different and a way to get outside of government work directly. And that's how I ended up finding my way to RMI. So some folks have probably heard Rocky Mountain Institute within the clean energy realm. It's fairly well known as kind of a think tank that works on both policy issues and market development. But my version of thinking about it is RMI is a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit, and we are dedicated to advancing climate action and a clean energy transition, largely through this sense of think, do, scale. We have our official mission, which is to transform the global energy system and secure a clean, prosperous, zero carbon future for all. We do a lot of different things, whether it's civil society, direct consultation and consulting for states or utilities or property owners. And so there's a lot of creative opportunities for different ways you can engage in clean energy work at RMI. And a lot of it for me, the reason why I felt at home in this organization is a lot of the philosophy of recognizing, you know, when it comes to climate change, winning slowly is the same as losing. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we need smart, curious, excited young people to join the workforce to be part of this transition. And we're already bearing these costs. This is a picture from the recent Marshall Fire that happened in Boulder County, which was the most destructive in terms of loss of property since the 2012-2013 fires in Colorado Springs in the state's history. And so it's recognizing that this isn't just about technological development, it's also about really improving people's lives, which is something that brings meaning to my work every single day. And so RMI has this philosophy, and it's thinking about tackling climate change and focusing on the main contributor, energy production and use, which represents 70% of GHG emissions nationwide. And so RMI specifically has a focus on kind of 2 key things and 5 key geographies. And so I am part of our carbon-free buildings program, which you will see on this driving decarbonization. It's the gold circle for working on specifically looking at what are the solutions to decarbonize our built environment. At the same time, there's a lot of market transformation that needs to happen. And so RMI as an institute, we are now pushing 500 people and are growing fast, and are working in a lot of key geographies, including China. We have offices in China, India. We're growing a new office in Nigeria and our work in the global South, as well as focus in the US and cities as actors writ large. And again, a lot of the way that RMI thinks about problems in the renewable energy space is this think, do, scale kind of dimension. A lot of my work these days is both running and helping with kind of governance and organizational management of a city cohort and network, actually within Massachusetts, on how can municipalities organize among themselves and identify what their best solutions are. So you think about the solutions, then how do you do and get them out in practice in the world? And then how can you replicate those solutions in other places? And so for opportunities with RMI, I just want to highlight two key places, which is RMI's summer internship program, as well as the fact that we are always hiring for associates and other early career opportunities. So we have a annual summer internship program, which has 50 plus openings across programs and our operations divisions, which includes programs like mine, which work specifically on decarbonization out in the world, as well as communications and international offices or development, where you get matched one-to-one with an RMI advisor. Applications, unfortunately, are usually November through January. So our applications have closed for this year, but please do keep a lookout and consider that in the future. And it's not just for folks currently in school. Folks at any point in their career are really encouraged to apply, though it's largely targeted for current undergraduate and graduate students. I'll share these slides so folks have them if they want them. It's paid internship programs, both full and part-time opportunities, usually 11 to 12 weeks during the summer. There are additional benefits, and right now everything is 100% remote, though RMI does have a number of offices in the US, including Oakland, Basalt and Boulder in Colorado, as well as Washington, DC and New York City. There's a broad variety of kind of projects that these internship opportunities can do, ranging from microgrids in Africa to working with city cohorts to specific research or modeling. It all depends on the program and the specific mentor that you're going to have. Yeah, this is just some more information, just like it's both undergraduates, master's students, PhDs. One of the folks who interned with my program last year was a former reporter for Colorado Public Radio who wanted to transition her career and did an internship with RMI, is now a county official. And I'll share these slides, just more information about what junior opportunities look like at RMI. And with that, look at our careers page, rmi.org/about/careers. We're always hiring and look forward to answering any questions. So I know also just a flag, climate change can be really stressful and a lot, and it can seem like a really big challenge, but also there are really actionable steps forward. And I have been really thankful for my experience, both working directly within government and within an NGO like RMI, to find ways that I am really making a meaningful contribution to the well-being of my community and other folks. So with that, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. So with that, is there anything after we've heard from everybody that any of you three panelists would like to add at this point before we move on to questions? Alrighty, well then we will go with our first question, which is perfect since we have all three people who are working in Colorado. This question says, what are the top positions / companies fresh graduates, so entry level, should be looking for if they want to enter the renewable energy development space in Denver? So I know we did just hear about Revolve, Rocky Mountain Institute, and Narelle, but do you guys have any other suggestions of good areas to look?
I mean, I would flag that the definition of renewable energy can get really big really quickly, and some of it is what you make of it. I have friends and coworkers who, for example, manage the energy supply for like the Auraria campus. So for universities, and figuring out how does a big institution like a university or, you know, a hospital or someone else, or even like a church or otherwise, figure it out. In terms of entry-level positions in politics or in the policy space, there are lots of opportunities, especially if you can afford to take a semester or to take a bit of unpaid or low paid work, working directly with elected officials or campaigns. But there's also a really broad network of renewable energy industries, whether it's small companies which do solar or storage. One of the best resources in Colorado is called CASA, the Colorado Solar and Storage Association, which is the trade association of solar and storage companies in the region. And so there are a lot of different ways. There's tons of opportunities at places like Narelle for research, and a lot of smaller companies, whether it's nonprofits like RMI or Sierra Club or Conservation Colorado, for doing more advocacy work.
Perfect. Does anybody have anything to add? Great. We will go on to our next question. So what do you recommend for someone who obtained a master's in energy systems engineering almost 2 years ago, but is unable to get a job at this time due to the pandemic?
I would say, especially, you know, in particular, don't give up, you know, because there are still a lot of opportunities, you know, even if the pandemic is there. And just like what Abraham was saying, you know, national are looking for people, NRL is looking for people. I know that sometimes, you know, those positions can be very specific, but just like what I was mentioning, I mean, do not be afraid to, you know, really highlight what you can bring to the organization, you know, and don't focus on the fact that you haven't been working for, you know, for 2 years. I still believe the opportunities are there, and you know, it's really continuing, you know, checking for those opportunities.
Yeah, I don't know if Sydney wants to jump in, but I would flag that, especially in like the energy systems engineering space, there are a lot of property owners, which include folks in industry, depending on your interest, which need really smart people in order to manage their portfolio. This is especially the case when you get cities like Denver, which now have a building performance standard in place. And so every commercial building in the city of Denver is going to have to transition to a net zero building over the next couple of decades. And so sometimes there's kind of the unexpected alliance or opportunities that might not seem like the first place to go, given your specific expertise. And so lots of companies, whether it's larger like organizations like Lockheed Martin that manage a lot of plants, or, you know, firms or otherwise, need people with your skills, as well as also pulling out what actually were the parts of that education and that training that most excited you. And it might not be one for one in terms of the description, the official description on a job, but recognizing what are the skills that you have, which often translate across industry, even if you don't have the official experience that someone says they're looking for in a job description.
Yeah, and I just add, I don't have a background in engineering, so I don't have too much to add in that sense. But I think too, getting your first job, or especially after getting like having gone to school and like looking for that first job, also like kind of what Samantha said, kind of going along that is just looking for a job that maybe has like 25, 30, 40% of like what you really want to do, and get those skills from that position. And then once you have like a year, 2 years of experience, you're really able to kind of take that experience and apply to that position that maybe needs a few more years of experience. But I think even if it's not the job that you're kind of pursuing or wanting, if it has some part of what you want to be doing in the future, being able to do that, and once you're there, once you're kind of ready to interview at other companies, you can make that next step. So that would kind of be my suggestion in that position, but kind of when you're out and pursuing a career out of graduation, to kind of think of it that way. You don't have to have your dream job as your first job. As a stepping stone is what I would recommend.
Great insight from all of you. Thank you. The next question that we have here is, how do you go to energy advocacy without having to work for politics or politicians?
Yeah, this is, I think, an important one. I've talked with a lot of folks with like a technical background who are like, no, I can't do policy. That's like corrupt and it's all like a mess. And like a lot of times it is, like lots of things end up as food fights. But there are ways to be an active civic participant, both as an individual in your own life, as well as jobs that aren't just working on staff for a specific elected official. And so I do want to flag that whatever community you are part of, you almost certainly have a sustainability committee for your community. And a lot of times, if you're seeing things that are progressing slowly, it's not because someone's actively trying to prevent it. It's because there's a vacuum. If it's a small town or even someplace larger, it might just be no one's job to organize or coordinate around the issue that you care about the most. And so you can always volunteer as an individual. And then there's other sorts of official paid jobs that exist within the policy space. And so I encourage everyone to consider working for a government or consider being part of an agency staff. There are a lot of really phenomenal public servants who do really important work managing energy programs, as well as being involved in the actual implementation of law that gets passed. There are also a lot of positions within utilities. I know it doesn't necessarily sound exciting to work for an electric utility, but a lot of them, especially, I can name electric utilities like Excel or Tri-State or a lot of rural co-ops, and there are a lot of municipal utilities who are really inventing what does it mean to have the next generation of an energy system. And so you can work from a utility, you can work from government, there are trade associations. If you're a member of a professional society, like I know I've been a member of the American Geophysical Union and Geological Society of America. There are a lot of different ways to be a participant, which doesn't specifically require being the person who like writes briefs and talking points for an elected official.
Does anybody have anything else to add? Great, so our next question is for you, Samantha, again. What are some of the entry-level positions that Rocky Mountain Institute is currently offering?
Yeah, I will just put the link in the chat to our career site. So I tried pulling this up, and there are things like associate positions within carbon-free buildings, which is part of my group, which is looking at the embodied carbon of materials like concrete and steel. And so there are more programmatic positions. There will be communications positions, things across like climate-aligned industry and mobility. And so lots of things, and I do not know all of the positions that are open, so I'm just going to put the link in the chat so you can explore for yourself.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, any suggestions on where to start your career in renewables, private or public sector?
Yeah, I think fellowships or internships are a great place to start. So I can highlight what Revolve's Solar Ambassador Fellowship is, kind of talked about it earlier, but that's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door. If you wanted to work in the solar industry in the private or the public sector, you're kind of able to talk about like our Solar Ambassador Fellows. They help bring solar to a nonprofit near their university. So this would be a great way to kind of talk about project management experience or experience kind of working in that sector. So finding opportunities like that, depending on if you're in university has so many different options for student employment, especially now. Most universities do have sustainability committee or student employees that are working on sustainability. That was my position all throughout undergrad. I feel like it really set me up for kind of pursuing sustainability in my full-time career. And so I would just suggest to also look at your university and see if there's any open positions in any kind of thing that you're interested in. There's likely open positions kind of in renewable energy or sustainability in general that your university needs help with as well.
I want to flag from like a pragmatic standpoint, it really sucks that a lot of the ways to get government experience pays really poorly, especially when it comes to working in a campaign or working for an elected official and getting to actually see the inside of how the sausage gets made. And so it is easier if you are able to get that experience at the beginning of your career when either you can afford or are able to take a lower paying job to be able to watch that opportunity. Like I lived with my parents when I did a fellowship in Higginlooper's office. Like it's part of the problem with politics. But I would recommend if you have the opportunity to volunteer or intern with a campaign or do something in the civic space with your city or otherwise when you're younger and can afford the time and the lack of compensation to do it, get it early, because once you're an established professional, it's harder to find opportunities to be able to get a look under the hood. It just is. So one thing that I'm going to add into the chat, Colorado actually has a science and engineering policy fellowship. It's led over the summer by 2 state senators whose backgrounds are in engineering, Senator Chris Hansen from Denver and Senator Bob Rankin from Carbondale. And so opportunities like that are a great way to have like a time-bound internship to learn how public sector, government, or politic things work and figure out if you like it or not, while it's easier then to explore options.
And I would like to echo what both Samantha and Sydney said about that. I believe, it's very important to start with internship, because that really helps you to first, know if you may like the field where you are at, or you may want to move to a different one. It's always a great opportunity. And of course, there are a lot of success stories, I know, free from Narelle, from people who start internship and now, they are leader at the US Department of Energy or, some other places. I believe it's a great opportunity just, to start from the beginning, even if, it is a low pay job, just to help you understand more, the different aspect of renewable and what you want to do before really getting too deep into it, or before doing a particular, training or studying for it. So
I want to say it's never too late. Don't think that like, oh my gosh, I didn't do this internship while I was in college. Like, you're not going to have an opportunity. Like all of my summers in college were spent in research labs, either doing geological field work or working with like pipettes and burettes doing chemistry lab. And I loved it. And because I had that experience of being in the lab, it makes me better at my job now. It's just being open to opportunities. And if there's something that seems interesting to you, seek out opportunities like this workshop, like this webinar or others, to be able to explore, ask people for informational interviews, take people out to coffee. I know lots of people are starved for one-on-one, like in-person human interaction right now. If there's something that seems interesting to you, ask someone who's already doing it for them to tell you their story. And it might just help you figure out whether you do or do not want to do the same thing.
We also have in the chat that James Orenstein from North Texas Renewable Energy Group has programs that are taking internships as well. So you can look at netrig.org And also ASES has a bunch of internships as well from all different areas, some being a little bit more technical and some being even more focusing on social media or helping with organization aspects. And Carly Cipolla is right here to show some of our internship opportunities as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so our internship opportunities are unpaid, but we, love having interns and volunteers helping with the organization. And if you do really good work and you're interested in moving up, we do usually offer some part-time paid or full-time paid positions to those that are really outstanding in the volunteer work that they do for our organization. So if you're interested, we have a bunch of different types of internship opportunities: communications, social media, fundraising and grants, membership marketing, data and technical divisions assistant. So we go, everywhere from communications, nonprofit work to some data and marketing experience. We're always looking for folks that aren't just, ENVS or environmental studies specific, but also dabble in, business and marketing and data and technical experience as well. And then we also obviously are also looking for assistance for our larger programs, such as the National Solar Conference and National Solar Tour, as well as finance, where we also always look for help with our Solar Today magazine editorial board, if you're interested in helping on our editorial board, as well as additional sales and marketing positions to help with bringing in funding for the organization. So here's just a taste of our internship opportunities. And then I also put a link in the chat to our internship and volunteer page. If you're interested in a position, you'll contact Anna Bybee, who's our intern coordinator, volunteer support. Her email is abybee@ases.org. I'll put that information in the chat as well.
And somebody is asking if the ASES positions are remote, and they are.
Yes. Yeah, they're all fully remote, except we do like our membership interns to be local to the Boulder area, if at all possible, to help with our membership mailings.
Great. And then we have another question for everybody that says, any suggestions starting your career in renewables after you've been in IT for 25 years?
Well, I believe there are a lot of opportunities. When I look at Narelle, there are a lot of people actually who work in IT, in the IT department, but actually IT applied to, renewable energy, for example, energy integration. There are a lot of people who are working, on the programming aspect, or, there is a lot of IT application in renewable energy, I believe. That's something, of course, that, if you are interested, it is worth looking at.
Yeah, and especially with renewable energy, as more and more like intermittent energy sources are added to the grid, utilities and grid operators are getting more and more sophisticated in terms of their technical capacity, in terms of how they actually balance and match like electricity supply and demand. I guess they match supply to demand. And so I guess there's a question of, right, you can clearly also do IT for the renewable industry. And there are lots of companies which just either from small scale mom and pop kind of solar businesses to larger corporations, which are in the renewable sector and do have IT needs. But there's also ways to kind of translate that experience that you have in terms of what actually is the part of the renewable energy system that most excites you. And I think there are lots of opportunities for translating. I have a friend who did his Ph.D. in cultural anthropology, who's realizing he wants to actually go into climate space. And what does it mean when you have a Ph.D. in cultural anthropology and we're doing postdocs? Well, it means you're actually really great at working with different people and engaging with stakeholders and figuring out how do you listen to what communities are experiencing to then facilitate or help them work through their own questions to arrive at a solution. And that's the kind of work which an engineer wouldn't be good at or wouldn't necessarily be good at. And so there are all sorts of skills that we need to make the clean energy transition happen. I think some of it is how creative do you want to be in matching kind of your past to what you're looking forward to in the future. And especially if you are in a more advanced place in your career and you have the ability or you have the financial security to start volunteering in some ways in your own community, there might be ways that as a really excited, motivated volunteer, you can start dipping your toes into some of these issues with your own local community, or an organization or a nonprofit that's really meaningful to you, to start getting some of that experience, just to have it on your resume, to start, building a little bit of the record, to be able to go in if you're applying for a job in a different field, saying, no, but this is what I actually want to be doing. Yes, maybe this is what I did in the past, but I intend to translate my skills in these kinds of ways in the future.
Yeah, I'd agree with what both Paul and Samantha said. You have so many years of experience and probably so many skills that are easily translated into a lot of positions. So I think that when you're looking at like what this position is going to entail, if you meet a lot of the requirements but don't meet others, I always say like, put your hat out there and apply, and like you might be what they are looking for. They might see your experience and really want someone that has that background. And then I think like the internship positions are always helpful too. If you're able to even take a couple months of an internship, that could really translate into getting a full-time position kind of in the renewable energy sector. So just piggybacking off of what they said as well, I think all those are great ideas.
And depending where you live, I know there's a really established program in the Bay Area for kind of professionals who are looking to transfer their existing skills into clean energy. I'm not the most familiar with all programs like that, but there are definitely institutions that exist for thinking about existing professionals looking to do a mid-career or late career transition. And so that can include looking at opportunities. For example, Narelle has a really wonderful Energy Executive Leadership Academy, which can train people from other divisions or other kind of sectors to think about, okay, but if I want to lead in a new way and I want to be in the energy space now. And so that might actually be a wonderful thing for ASES to compile is, resources for folks looking to transition their career.
Yeah, definitely. Good tip. Also here we got as the solar industry generally, like as a workforce, has a shortage of workers right now, getting people up on rooftops, installing solar. So if you're willing to learn these new skills, there's Solar Energy International. That's another nonprofit that does teach some solar workforce classes, and you can also take NABCEP courses online to get education credits to become eligible to be a solar installer. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well if you're willing to do some hands-on work, lots of workforce opportunities.
And some of Solar Energy International's like Solar 101 course is free. So that is a good starting spot as well. Another question that we have, which kind of piggybacks off this, is, are there any specific certifications or trainings that helped you guys throughout your career? Samantha, it looks like you have quite a thought on this.
Well, mostly, I think one of the challenges that I went through in my career was the lack of official training for generating clean energy policy professionals. A lot of these fields are new in general, or have only recently been considered as, clean energy or climate jobs, right? As being an insulator and doing weatherization, now a climate job, in the way that previously it might have been thought about being a contractor. And so I think for me, in my professional career, I have found value to some extent in organizations like AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is a hub for a lot of science policy. more broadly community in the country. They're the folks who publish science, and they have a science policy forum that they organize every year, though it's been delayed given COVID. I also want to highlight a relatively new professional society called ASAP. It's the American Society of Adaptation Professionals, which is more specifically looking at folks who are actually like either government employees or advocates or others doing the work of adapting and mitigating climate change. A lot of it came out of a lot of women in the Southeast who were dealing with kind of the, how do you manage when your coastline is disappearing? And you're getting saltwater intrusion, which is not particularly an energy issue, but it's connected to kind of training for thinking about adaptation and climate professionals as its own professional field. And so I haven't yet found necessarily formal trainings as well that necessarily prepared me for my job, but there are a lot of budding and new networks like the National Science Policy Network and others, as well as a lot of trade associations have now expanded, and professional societies have expanded beyond their more traditional role into providing trainings for their community. Within the American Geophysical Union is one example. They've got a wonderful program called Thriving Earth Exchange, which helps professional geologists and geoscientists apply their skills to problems in communities like air quality issues or water or otherwise. I don't know, I'd be curious if Sydney or Paul had like more formal training that they felt prepared them for the role that they have.
I'd also agree. I think I got a master's in sustainability leadership. I think that kind of helped in like a whole like sustainability on a broad sense, but specifically what I'm doing at Revolve, I think that really what helped me was my experience in undergrad. And I also took on a side job when I was out of grad school, where I was managing social media for a startup nonprofit focused on sustainability efforts. And that's a lot of like the communications work that I'm doing at Revolve. So outside of my job, before Revolve, where I was doing policy or projects-based work, I was able to kind of focus a little bit more on communications work. So not really training, but in my experience, it's just been experience that I've gained either through kind of a side gig or university or elsewhere, but not as much training professionally outside of like the degrees.
And yes, what I may add is, I didn't have, I didn't take a specific training, but I believe big organizations like Narelle or others, they have, some opportunities, within those organizations. We have constant training, or, you can even take, go for certificate, to take some certifications. And the great thing, of all this, of course, is, for example, the organization pay for those opportunities. I believe, the question is also whether, those certification, the goal is to find a job, or, to get expertise in a particular area. And maybe it would be important to differentiate both of those, because if it is really to kind of get experience, I believe within an organization, there are possibility of getting, those experience. And just, what both Sydney and Samantha talk about, organizations that have, all these external organization where one also can, maybe go to, to get a particular training. There are several of them. It just depend on, what one want to achieve in terms of professional career or expertise. And something I would like to add, of course, I always like this expression, jack of all trades, master of none. It depends. Some people are really very attracted to that. They like to know a little bit of everything. And, big organization are also opportunities to learn a little bit around. I know that from my perspective, when I started at NRL, I didn't know much about renewable energy, but I've been moving in so many different positions from, photovoltaic, concentrating solar power, water splitting. I have been working on soiling, on PV, certification of solar panel, but also I had the opportunity to help with some international work with United Nations, for developing countries. There are always opportunity. I guess, once you are within the organization, now you start knowing about more opportunities, and you can really go and get what you need. But it all depends on what the objective is, of course.
Great, thanks so much. Our last question to wrap up for today is, what is the best career advice that you've ever received, and what do you hope that the audience takes away from today? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of a specific piece of advice, but as I was applying, I was at the Colorado Department of Transportation, intern there, applying for my first full-time job right when the pandemic hit. It was, I'd say, pretty tough to find a position. So my mentor gave me probably the best piece of advice I've ever received is to create a professional portfolio. So these are usually portfolios are usually for arts and different things like that. But what I did is she suggested I create a portfolio highlighting all of the projects I've done, all the experience I have. And it's really what allowed me, or what helped me get this job that I currently have at Revolve. So that really was a great piece of advice, highlighted all of the projects I've had. I think in a resume, you can only put 1 or 2 pages of information. You're not really able to highlight all of those attributes you have. And especially as a young professional, you have known so much. And even if it's career in your classes or anything like that, I sent it in with my cover letter. And I think that's what helped me kind of get into at least an interview and kind of prove yourself and show yourself. So at least for me, that's what has really helped. And I've passed it along to other folks. And so yeah, that's just a piece of advice that really grateful I got, especially kind of getting your first time job is just a way to stand out. So that's the best advice I've received.
Well,
Oh.
yeah, somebody want to maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Samantha, okay. So maybe this is not related really to finding a job, but in terms of career, I believe this has been really helpful to me, and that's the profile, what is called Profile 360, is really getting inside from all people most of people you have been working with, whether you have great relationship or not. It's always great to have their feedback, because really that helps you to see how people first of all sees you, and things you may need to work on and improve, because we always need to improve regardless of how good we think we are doing our job, or how good are the feedback from our manager or others. I believe it's a very important to realize how people really see us around them, and then try to improve whether communication, whether interaction, that helps really to set you in a better position in the environment you are working at, and also improve your relationship, but also improve your personality as a human being, just be a better person among others. I believe that, yes, that's really has been very helpful, and it's always I believe very important to get feedback from from others, from other people who are around you. So
yeah, I think a piece of advice that has really stuck with me is thinking about almost like an 80-20 rule. Careers in the workforce have changed a lot since the age of definitely my parents. My dad recently retired. He was a Lockheed Martin engineer with the same company for 25 years or something like that. And the economy is just really different, and it feels really it feels uncomfortable to think about yourself as a brand. But at the end of the day, like, you are the hero of your own story. You're the protagonist, and it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure. And so when I've been told about the 80-20 is, yes, maybe like 80% of your work hours, which hopefully is only like 40 hours a week, but often isn't, will spend 80% of your time really focused on what is required for your specific job. And then try to spend the other 20% of your time just exploring, making new connections, learning about new fields, finding new people, reading stories, reading papers. And you never know, like that 20% of your brain, which gets to be a little bit more free space and creative, will both help you do your actual job better in likelihood, because you will be making new connections and new ideas. But also, there's always the opportunity to change. And just because you're in the role you currently are in today, and even if you really like it, it doesn't mean you can't apply for something else or consider changing to a different career, a different sector, going back to that thing that you put on the shelf a couple of years ago, you know. And so that's been something that I think has helped keep me grounded through like a crazy pandemic, is, you know, recognizing we should be investing in ourselves. And that's both good for your mental health. It's good for your general wellness. It's good for your work-life balance. And also, it's good at helping you better find how to spend your time in a way that's going to make you happier. Because at the end of the day, like, a job is a job. And I think I'm really lucky. And I think the other folks on this panel would say we feel really lucky to have the jobs that we do have. But it also, you know, you can always make a more perfect union, right? Like, things can always be better. And so investing and taking the time to think about that question has been huge for me.
And I would like to add a little bit of what Samantha said, but more on the research perspective, because actually it's a pity that a lot of, or most of the research company do no longer do it, but that's what Bell Labs used to do. Bell Labs was, I would say, one of the most prestigious or the most prestigious research lab in US, until maybe the end of the 80s or 90s. Every researcher was dreaming to work at Bell Labs. And what they used to do is they dedicate 80% of time, for the research, 20%, they just tell you to work on whatever you want to work. And that's where really innovation came from. And that's, the time, of course, where, the solar cells, what we know today as solar panels start from Bell Labs. A lot of innovation start from Bell Labs. And most of those innovations really started because people were exploring things that they were not assigned to work on, just like some idea they have. And I believe that's a very nice perspective.
Yeah, that's a beautiful comment to make. Good point.
I also hope that this has expanded people's idea of what it means to work in renewable energy, because it's not just the small solar company and putting solar on rooftops or anything else. It's a whole ecosystem, and I hope that folks are ready to dive in and explore.
Perfect. Well, with that, we are going to wrap up. We can still continue this conversation with these three panelists and then many more who are in the renewable energy field on the ASES Online Community. So pop on over there if you are a current member. These three will be able to have access to it to hopefully answer some of your questions, and then also to connect and network with other people in the renewable energy space as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Narelle.
Wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Narelle, for having the capacity to put this together and for the connections that you've made for the ASES webinar series here. Thank you, Sydney and Samantha and Paul, for joining us today, as well as Abe, who had to hop off a couple minutes early. But thank you guys so much for hopping on and really having this conversation today. Really appreciate it here at ASES.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We have this recorded. I'll have it available as a YouTube link later this week. So again, look out for an email from me with the link to the recording. And yes, thanks again. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.